courts. And then we also have a cost for that Arrowhead open space. So we need a boundary survey, fencing, some signage to allow the community to utilize that open space. So some costs there that luckily the Conservation Trust Fund can pay for that doesn't have to come out of our general fund parks budget. Those ending fund balances are listed there, a little over $1 million for the Street Impact Fund, about $3.1 million in Park Impact Fund, and just shy of $500,000 in the Conservation Trust Fund after these items. CIP Streets Fund has a few carry forward items as well. And again, these were items that either weren't fully paid or expended prior to year end. So we did have the 31st Street Access Control construction costs there. We do also have the anticipated grant revenue that we will be receiving included in the budget revision. We had a small amount of cost for completion of 35th Avenue. We have 37th Street widening design, and then our funding set aside for 47th Avenue widening. We'll continue to roll that until you. Council did preliminarily approve a project management contract with Itesco for $185,000 for 37th Street, so we're bringing that into the budget as well. And our fund balance in CIP Streets Fund at about $600,000. In the CIP Parks Fund, we have a few carry forward items that were approved last year. There are some solid waste monitoring costs that we'll continue to have to do by state as we get further out from that capping. Excuse me. We'll also have, I think, some grading, some signage, some fencing, a few small costs there that will carry forward as we complete that. Ending fund balance in the Parks Fund about $215,000, and then we have two items in our food tax fund. It was the construction on the County Road 396 bridge, as well as the portion of 31st Street Access Control project that fund paid for, and ending fund balance there of about $667,000. We're getting close to being done with these. Number of carry forward items in the water fund: Neville's Crossing non-potable direct supply project, the non-potable irrigation system at Tuscany, the Evans Ditch, both measurement project and condition survey and repair. That's continuing to be an ongoing project each year. We have the 37th Street utility improvements, the construction project, both in all the utility funds, as that money wasn't also spent prior to year end. And then the 17th Avenue line replacement that's currently underway and close to being done. Happy to have that reappropriated this year to finish that. A couple of new requests. We do have an opportunity to upgrade census meters, both the antennas and the meters that would allow both electronic meter reads as well as shutoffs to be done electronically. That'll, I think, gain some efficiencies for staff, not having to go out and do manual shutoffs on some of these homes. So hopefully it's a cost that the water fund can front now that also has great payback of efficiencies for staff time. The Peakview Metro District, the water line upsizing there is about $177,000 that we would pay to Peakview. And then, as Jim mentioned, we have the potential purchase of Willowbrook non-potable system if council were to approve that. This is our anticipated payment for that first year. The ending fund balance in the water fund after those items is still about $4.2 million. Starting the wastewater fund, two carry forward items. We have the Ashcroft Draw aerial crossing, as well as the wastewater fund component of the 37th Street utilities. Also have the wastewater dewatering project and annual sewer line maintenance funds that we're carrying forward. We have a couple new request items: the plant capacity and expansion studies, lagoon decommissioning design, and that one has revenue associated with it. We do have a small portion of SRF loan funds that we received when we built the new plants. We have that $203,000 that we still can use for this related project. So that's nice to have the revenue to pay for that piece as well. Peakview Metro District's cost to upsize for wastewater is about $93,000. And we have an additional new item on here. It's the Vapex odor control project at the wastewater treatment plant. So we're estimating costs at about $350,000 to help the odor control at the new plant from that influent water. The wastewater fund after that has an ending fund balance of about $9.1 million. And then we have a few items here for storm drainage. We weren't able to get the approved storm department vehicle in last year with the strike from GM. So that complicated things. Staff did a good job of ordering it timely, and a few things were out of their control. Storm fund component of the 37th Street Utility Improvement Project. And then we have a number of items. Some of them are a component of the East Side Storm Drainage Project that you continue to hear more and more about. But we also have 29th and Anchor Inlet improvements, improvements at the Ridge at Prairie View Outfall, Railroad to Boulder Street improvements, 35th Street alignment design. That's one of the larger upcoming projects, as is Highway 85 improvements at Heritage Inn, that drainage design. And then one new item in here, I apologize, I have it listed as carry forward, but the Storm Drainage Fund also has a cost share in the Tuscany non-potable irrigation system to ensure that drainage is functioning appropriately. There was a design cost component that the Storm Fund directly has. So we have about a $6.5 million ending fund balance in the Storm Drainage Fund. So a lot of projects going on there. And I think that rounds the budget revision.
One more slide for council. Or no?
Keep going.
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
So just to finish up for staff, this, I think council is aware, but also for the public, those last few slides show a whole lot of use of funds. Well, except for the general fund, the general fund is the one that's supported by sales tax and most directly affected by the economy, and that's where we focus the first part of the presentation. The other funds, all those capital funds, all those project funds have either restricted either fee or grant revenues that we really can't use for anything else. As council is aware, many of those projects have been saving money for a number of years to get those projects done. So I think it is important, and I try to remember when we're talking with staff or any group, just that those capital funds are different. We generally can't use that money for operations, and that's why you see that difference between the general fund and the other funds. So we do have a little bit of time left, and we'd love to hear council's feedback either on the 2020 budget reduction strategies and your direction regarding the approach to use about 2.1 million of savings at least this year, plus some fund balance to balance out this year as we focus on the 2021 budget to really make the reductions necessary to hopefully not need fund balance for next year. And then finally, we're also looking for your direction to proceed with the 2020 budget revision, either as presented or with changes that you might have for us tonight. That's all we have, Mayor.
Questions or comments of staff?
So I would like to see that we, go with use the reduction strategies about the operational reductions and, to use those transition to the next year's 2021 budget. However, what I'd like to also see is maybe more of a reduction again in the oil and gas industry, especially in the industrials. As you may not be aware, one of the extractions filed for bankruptcy, because of all of the setbacks in the oil and gas industry and everything like that. And I'm sure there will be other, industries to follow in that aspect, which could be, result in layoffs for those companies, reduction in the industrial services that the oil and gas industry use in Evans and other places in Weld County. So I would like to see more of a cut to the oil and gas revenues and the industrial revenues than what we're seeing now. But I want to say I think the presentation was fantastic, and I appreciate the staff putting the time and effort into it, everything, and I really hope that the economy will bounce back and won't have as much of a reduction as that we're looking at and anticipating, but I definitely think we're going to see it really hard in the industrial aspect of it.
Mayor Pro Tem, other questions or comments?
Well, I agree with Mark that I appreciate the work staff's put in on this, and it seems like you're closely monitoring it, which is what we need to do, because this council may have to make some tough decisions in the coming months. Hopefully not. But I think we need to get that extra data in the next couple of months before we start making drastic reductions in staff and limiting services even further.
Okay. Other comments or questions?
I really appreciate everyone's effort collectively in assisting with all the reductions. For me, I am so against letting go of people, laying off and all that. I want it to be the last resort. Granted, I understand, and I'm also, I know sometimes it's inevitable. I do like what you've constructed, and I do agree with what you have presented and all the revisions that have been changed. I do like what's going on, and thank you for all the carryovers and all the projects that have to be placed aside, because ultimately we have to ensure that we're able to continue moving forward with everything the best way. So that's all I have to say. But thank you so much, everyone, because I know everyone really helped to get this revision and all those reductions up for us. I know it was hard for everyone, but something that we all have to work together to do.
Anyone else? I'm definitely okay with the 2020 budget revisions. I think those look good. And we need to move forward with a lot of those projects. And I am also okay with looking at using some of our fund balance to cover 2020, and then we can look forward you said September, is that when we're going to start? Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll look forward to 2021 then, so I'm okay using fund balance. Other questions or comments?
I would agree, and we've had this conversation at the Finance Committee, but my primary concern, staff is well aware of this, is far less 2020, but really 2022,
Yep.
when we'll see the reduction in, I'll say potential, probably probable reduction in property tax revenues, coupled with those applicable to oil and gas. Extraction is still going through Weld County, so that's going to have a really significant impact. I pulled records for all wells within Weld County to try and monitor where that is and everything else for my professional job. But just knowing the impact that'll have is really significant. So I greatly appreciate the work staff is doing. I understand it's never easy to make budget cuts, but to see how quickly staff leaned in and walked through this process is remarkable. I think we're in very capable hands, and what impresses me is that the city was able to do their due diligence in the beginning and build up that fund balance. I can't help but wonder what it would have felt like had we not done that, and knowing that we do have options, which is more than a lot of places can say. So I certainly hope that our community recognizes and understands the incredible amount of work that went in prior to all of this for events such as this. We never anticipated anything like this, but knowing that that is helping to overcome is fantastic. I think we have the ability to thrive, and I think we will keep on doing that. So commendable work. Thank you 1,000 times over to staff for all of that.
Councilwoman Spear, anything?
No, I sit on the Finance Committee, so I had a lot of my questions answered, but I do want to follow up with Councilmember Clark and Neil's recommendation on the oil and gas, as the Finance Committee has heard from me. I know that when I do my budgets for my business, that I use the oil and gas as a supplemental income and not a general fund income, with regular income being budgeted in from oil and gas. So I've always recommended that we use that as extras and a wish list if it goes good, and if it's going bad, like unfortunately it is right now, that we are reliant on that. So I was in with the committee, and I got to see all of the diligent work that the staff has put together on this, and I agree with Councilmember Castle on all of her points that she made, that it's great that we can be proactive on this instead of reactive, and hopefully what is being done right now will be the extreme of what we actually have to do. So, thank you.
Amen to that.
Councilwoman Hortenson, anything? Anything left, Jim?
That's all. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the PD response plan for the 4th of July holiday. We'll hear from Chief and Jim.
If you thought the last item was fireworks. Here we go. No, I will give just the preface that the 4th of July and fireworks enforcement is always a big challenge for us, and we know that it is a high priority for the council each year. So I asked the chief to just come prior to the 4th to give just kind of an update to the council on how the department is already preparing. And take it away, Chief.
Thank you, Jim. Evening, Mayor and Council. So our strategies this year very much are going to mirror some of the successes we had last year and in previous years in terms of we're focusing on early communication, early education of our residents. We're going to use the same types of communications that seemed to resonate last year with our residents. Things like water billing notifications through water billing, signboards at strategic locations of points of entry within the city. We're going to use social media more extensively since we now have, sort of broader access to social media. We're printing up more pamphlets like we did before. That seemed to be a pretty positive response from our citizens, with officers handing them out randomly, putting them in businesses so folks, when they go in, they can pick those things up. So again, we're focusing on a lot of free education and information for our folks, and letting them know that we're going to, again, this year focus on, pretty strict enforcement. I've met with the judge, and we're going to use the same protocols we've used last year. He wants to impose a $2,000 fine for all violations. That'll be seen before him, and we'll see if last year's heavy fines has any impact this year. So in terms of the communication piece, that's what we're focusing on. Officers, historically we've had areas in the city that are sort of the heavy offenders. So officers are going to focus heavily on those high visibility prior to the 4th of July, talking to residents as we can, let them know we're going to be out there, and hopefully discourage excessive or any, illegal fireworks use. Our response plan is also similar to, our enforcement plan is similar to previous years. Again, we've canceled all leave on the 4th of July, so the officers that are scheduled will all be in. 4th of July this year, unfortunately for us, falls on a Saturday. So we're going to anticipate a couple of things. Number one, that's not an overlap day for patrol shifts. So the shift that we have, working night shift, is probably going to be it. We are instituting 10 overtime shifts from July 1st to July 5th. A little bit less than we've done in the past, but our staffing right now, as council knows, we're 6 or 7 positions down, 7 positions down right now. We have 5 officers in training, which we cannot deploy in this. They can be with their FTOs if they're working. I think 2 recruits will be working that night with their FTOs. So my staffing levels are already impacted. Plus the officers, as council is also aware, we've been on emergency staffing protocols for approaching a year now. I'll be frank with council, the officers are tired, and I'm concerned that we're not going to be able to fill a lot of these overtime shifts. We've already posted them, and the officers know they're available for sign up, and we're waiting to see, but I anticipate 2 things. Number one, we're not going to have a real eager response by the officers. They're pretty tired, working as much as they have been on the shortages. And secondly, we anticipate this might be an especially raucous year for the 4th of July. I think with everything, with the restrictions and the quarantines being lifted and business being opened, I don't have any data to back that up. It's just sort of a gut feeling that I anticipate it's going to be a little more raucous than we've seen in the past. So officers are still going to strive to get probable cause and make arrests where appropriate, meaning summonses where appropriate, and do strict enforcement as we can. We will seize fireworks if we come across them, but that's sort of where we're at this year. It's going to be a challenging year for us and this holiday. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. We're going to do the best we can. We're not hiding. We will be out there, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Chief. Questions for Chief Pruitt?
I don't have a question. I just think, I just have a comment. I think last year we got enough in fines to pay for the overtime for the officers that were there. And I want to, ahead of time, thank the officers. They are usually very responsive. And I know it's a tough time for them right now. And I just hope that they have some compassion for the citizens and can kind of step up once again, like they have always done. So I do appreciate that, and the signage is really great. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll pass that on, and the officers will do the best they can.
Well, as I mentioned to Chief, he came in. I've already experienced about a half an hour of pretty heavy fireworks, but no mortars, thankfully, from a place right across the street that's in the county. So I'm anticipating that we will have quite the show this year from our residents, and we're going to keep the officers busy, I'm sure.
They will try.
Other questions or comments?
I think, go ahead, Ally.
What I was just gonna ask was, is there anything different that we're implementing this year, 2020, from the 2019 fireworks enforcement?
Other than we've expanded our social media footprint, so I think we reach more people now on different levels. So I think we'll be able to message a little bit more effectively, but I think that's about the most significant change.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
I think it would be advantageous to really lean into that social media presence, whether it be on Facebook or whatever, to try to get any of it in the budget prior to the holiday. I think if people understand the fines that they could be facing, perhaps it would deter some of that. But even then, if their neighbors understand, and so that's not always possible in the court, I think that would be advantageous. I really love for people to understand the impact on the city and those around them. I know we hear people, I'm one of them, that complain about them. I don't like it. I have pets, I have children, and I have family that are vets and just understand the impact. But I think if we can help to educate everybody and lean into that, that would be great. I know we'll get some probably comments that aren't in favor of that, but ideally we can help to educate it.
I agree with that, but I also kind of piggybacking on what Fred said, certain areas are Weld County, and I think people don't understand that that's not our jurisdiction. So somehow, also messaging that in a way so people understand that specific areas are areas that we are not able to go to. It's like they live in the vicinity. I'm not certain how you do that, but even if there was a map of some sort, just indicating like specific neighborhoods, maybe one that's more, if it's one of the neighborhoods that tends to have more fireworks happening, and if it's adjacent to Weld County, then having something to show, hey, there's a possibility it might not be in our city. So
yeah, we can look at putting like a map on some of the pamphlets or that sort of thing, because that is an issue, obviously, when they're, especially the aerials going up.
Exactly.
I mean, they don't know where the city line is, so.
And also, like, for example, on 35th and 37th, there's that mobile home park there. That's really, and I mean, considering that it's like within our city, people think that it's it's Evans, and it isn't. So if anything happens there, also it's not our jurisdiction either. So there's nothing really we can do but have maybe the person that calls in, luckily we all call into the Weld County Dispatch, let them know it's a Greeley neighborhood.
Chief, it's a kind of a delicate situation with being able to prove who was shooting off fireworks. I think that's what the officers have more of a little, I don't know, delay in actually accosting someone about it, is because the neighbor will call and say they're shooting off fireworks, and by the time they get there. How are we with any kind of videotaping? I mean, if you're sitting there videotaping your neighbor shooting off mortars, and the police get there and they kind of disperse and say they weren't doing anything, and you have it on videotape, is that something that is permissible?
Yes, yeah, we will accept that as courtroom evidence for probable cause,
Okay.
certainly. And I mean, you make a good point. Even when the officers do turn down the street, 10 people can be standing around and. Yeah,
I've witnessed it. I
yeah,
mean,
of course.
I'm on a first name basis with half of your department.
And we are putting the officers in unmarked cars so they can be a little stealthy, but. Yeah.
Yes, so that's good to know, because I witnessed that a lot, and I'm sure everybody else has too. You call in, and by the time the officer gets there, the neighborhood goes quiet. Mm-hmm. And then they leave, and then, it's worse than the 4th of July again.
I'm not out that late to witness.
So thank you for letting us know. And maybe, maybe that's something else that we need to promote. If you're caught on video doing this, you are subject to fines and tickets too. So, that would probably really discourage people too, knowing that if they're caught on video, which everybody has a video camera now, that it might be a little discouraging.
I agree with that.
Yeah, we could maybe put on the communication that, if you're videotaping, I mean, you'll be called as a witness, obviously, in court, but if people are willing to testify, sure.
Right.
I think it might be advantageous to appropriately inform people how they should approach a situation. Well, I think videotaping is fine. I don't know that everybody would approach it with the same grace. Yes, and so I do worry about the health and safety of all residents. What I don't want is to encourage people to kind of go after each other, but perhaps say, hey, if you have a doorbell camera that catches this, if you can safely record, but encouraging safety first and foremost. I do worry about situations like escalating quickly.
You talk about social media, reach out and things like that. Do you gentlemen and ladies also reach out to the HOAs in the area, because they also have email newsletters or ways to reach out to us through email. So I'm in the Ridge at Prairie View, and we get information from them. When we're having meetings, things like that, and I sign up for the e-newsletter because I don't do paper mail normally. But that might be another presence to reach out to, even though, yes, we're on Facebook, things like that. People, like my parents, don't have Facebook. They won't do it, but they would look at their email. So if they get an email from the HOA, that might help a little bit too.
Okay. So we'll reach out to the HOAs as well. We have good relationships with one of the HOAs.
Fun these last few weeks, I would say.
Anyone else? Mayor Pro Tem Clark, do you have anything?
I don't have anything to add, thanks.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is the Planning Commission appointments process. Back to you, Jim.
Thank you, Mayor. Just as council is aware, we have had 2 planning commissioners resign, actually at the last meeting on June 4th. So staff has put together a process to propose to council for recruiting new planning commissioners and ultimately appointing them. The process is spelled out in your staff report, but essentially it can be summarized that we have the recruitment process going now, lots of social media, any other forms that we can get going, any other forms of communication within the kind of time frame that we're planning here. Applications will be taken through June 24th, so a couple, I guess, one more week. And we then would envision an interview process with the council. We've currently blocked an hour on your work session for July 7th. So that might be another early start work session. But we are hoping to give you time for some interviews pending the number of applicants that we have on July 7th. Time permitted, you would hopefully have some time for discussion following the interviews, and then we would be ready, if council's ready, to appoint council members or to have you appoint council members that evening at your regular council meeting so that that new member can be oriented quickly and brought up to speed with the master planning process and the other business of the planning commission as quickly as possible. Of course, if we have more applicants, we need more time, or council's just not ready to appoint on the 7th, we would then flex that and plan to agendize the appointment process at your next meeting there. So it's all really based on the applicants and your direction this evening on the process, but that's what we had envisioned. I'll also just mention, we would like your feedback on that, but we're also planning, we recommend the council has some recognition for the planning commission members that have served now for several years. So we're actually teeing that up for your July 21st meeting. We'd like to recognize that service. And also, we're planning to bring back, probably at your July 7th meeting, a procedure in the form of a resolution or an ordinance. I haven't checked with Scott yet, but just establishing those, being very clear about those attendance policies that reflect council's requirements, as I think I've heard from most council requests that formalization so that we can let our applicants know, let anyone who's appointed know about the attendance requirements for planning commission. So that concludes my remarks. We're really just looking for your feedback on that appointment process. So taking applications through the 24th, scheduling interviews with council on July 7th, then pending council's readiness, you'll be able to appoint that evening if you'd like, or come back at your following meeting for the appointment process. That's all we have, and Bess Johnson for any questions that you might have about the process.
Yep. Questions or comments?
I'm fine with the timeline and the procedures.
I just want to make a comment on the recognition part of it. I do think it's important to recognize those members that have been on there for a long time. However, I know that when I was on Planning Commission, the night that I was appointed, it was kind of a big deal in the way of I was here, I was appointed, but I was also given a nice certificate. I can send you a photo of it if you'd like. We haven't done that. And I think that at least with a nice certificate of recognition on the front end too, it's a good welcoming to let them know that they are important. If they want to put it up on their wall at home or whatever, I just would like to recommend that we do start that up again.
I like that because that brings back that pride of, helping our community in all those boards and commissions. So I do like that idea. I agree with that. Thank you, Councilmember Spear.
Other questions or comments? Good. Thank you.
That's all we need.
Council discussion. Anyone want to give any words?
I don't have anything.
We had a meeting on this past Friday at the Citizen Police Advisory Committee. We spoke regarding our co-responder program. So the Evans Police Department has a program where they have a clinician on staff, and so they go out and de-escalate any situations that involve mental health. And we definitely discussed all the stats and the information on how that's been working for them. And we also, they did also submit another grant, for a grant for another year. But we also discussed on having them also bring back that information to the public and letting them know how proactive the Evans PD is in that aspect, especially with the climate now. And I really want to highlight all the efforts that the Evans Police Department is doing to help our community. I think that's definitely one of them, just because not all police departments have a program like that. So, and then we also discussed other topics, such as like the defunding aspect, the police, and on what our thoughts were and what we think about it. Right now, it's just kind of really understanding what that looks like. It was a great discussion. I think we definitely all kind of see the value of it and also agree on certain aspects. But that is all that I have. I believe that's kind of the points that we touched, unless you want to add to that. No? You're welcome.
Other council discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll take a 20-minute break. Start at 7.